Think about your morning routine. Maybe it's that first, desperate cup of coffee that finally stops the fog in your brain. Maybe it's a Tylenol for a nagging headache, or a prescription that keeps your chemistry in balance. We think of drugs as a modern miracle, or a modern crisis. We think of white coats, sterile labs, and complex chemical equations. But I want you to put down that coffee for a second. Imagine you're standing in a forest 1,000,000 years ago. You aren't even a Homo sapiens yet. You're a Homo erectus, a creature with a smaller brain and a heavy brow. You've just figured out how to keep a fire going inside a cave to stay warm. As the sun sets and the absolute existential darkness of the ancient world closes in, you sit downwind of the flames. The smoke is thick. It's choking. It's curling right into your face. But then something weird happens. You don't just feel the heat. You feel different. The shadows on the cave wall start to dance a little faster. Your heavy limbs feel light. The anxiety of the day, the fear of the leopard in the tall grass, starts to melt away. You didn't go to a pharmacy. You didn't consult a doctor. You just sat downwind of the wrong bush and had a really unexpectedly great evening. This is the story of how humans invented drugs. And spoiler alert, we didn't invent them at all. We stumbled into them. We fell in love with them. And then we built entire civilizations to make sure we never ran out. Let's go. The first thing you have to understand is that the desire to change how we feel, to alter our consciousness, isn't a character flaw or a modern habit. It might actually be a biological fourth drive. We know the big three: hunger, thirst, and sex. But psychopharmacologists like Ronald Siegel argue that the pursuit of intoxication is just as fundamental. And the evidence isn't just in our history books, it's in the woods. See, we aren't the only ones looking for a hit. In Siberia, reindeer have been caught eating hallucinogenic mushrooms, and then, this is real, drinking the urine of other reindeer who ate the mushrooms because the psychoactive compounds passed through intact. In Africa, elephants will travel for miles to find fermented marula fruit specifically to get drunk. Nature is full of users. So, when our ancestors started experimenting with plants, they weren't doing anything unnatural. They were following a deep animal instinct that predates humanity itself. But unlike the reindeer, we had two things that changed everything: fire and curiosity. For hundreds of thousands of years, every human who sat near a fire was breathing in a cocktail of compounds. Wood smoke isn't just carbon, it's a chemical mixture. And if you happen to throw a specific kind of weed or a certain branch onto that fire, you were essentially running a primitive laboratory. Here is the mind-blowing part. Your brain was already waiting for this. We have receptors in our nervous system, like cannabinoid receptors, that are specifically tuned to interact with plant compounds. These receptors didn't evolve because of the plants. They are part of our internal signaling systems that regulate mood and memory. But when that first ancient hunter inhaled the smoke of a burning cannabis plant, his brain didn't get confused. It said, "Oh, hello, I've been waiting for you." It wasn't a plan. It was a beautiful, accidental collision between our biological hardware and the chemistry of the earth. But humans aren't just animals that get high. We're a species that takes notes. We turned those accidental great evenings into the foundation of medicine. Long before drugs were recreational, they were survival tools. We found medical documents like the Ebers Papyrus from ancient Egypt, dating back to 1550 BC, which describes inhaling the smoke of heated herbs to treat lung and throat conditions. Think about that. They realized that if a plant had a medicinal property, the fastest way to get it into the system was to burn it and breathe it in. It's the same logic we use for asthma inhalers today. In the ancient world, drugs were the only tools women had for some of the most difficult parts of life. Medieval herbalists used emanagogues, plants like parsley, pennyroyal, and tansy, to stimulate menstrual flow and manage reproductive health. Ancient Chinese physicians developed refined formulas to treat blood stagnation and cold in the uterus. These weren't just folksy superstitions. They were accumulated empirical knowledge. Generations of women tried different plants, reported back, and passed that knowledge from mouth to ear around the fire. This was prehistoric trial and error. Very high stakes, occasionally fatal. But eventually, we learned exactly which root stopped the pain and which leaf brought the vision. Now, we have to talk about the social technology of drugs. Why did ancient tribes do this together? Because being a human is lonely, and being in a tribe is hard. For a group to survive, they needed deep, unshakable trust. Anthropologists believe that shared altered states, whether it was breathing in cannabis smoke in a Scythian tent or sharing a fermented drink, acted as a form of social infrastructure. When a group enters a shared altered experience, it synchronizes their neural activity. It builds a sense of connection that language alone can't reach. The ritual smoke circle wasn't just a party. It was a way to build the kind of trust that let you go into a mammoth hunt together and know the person next to you had your back. This is why, for thousands of years, these substances were sacred. In the Americas, tobacco wasn't something you smoked on a lunch break. It was a carrier of prayers. A shaman who smoked was opening a channel between the living and the divine. The smoke was a messenger that traveled between worlds. Because these plants were so powerful, they were disciplined. They were ritualized. You didn't chain smoke, something that could talk to the gods. So, if this is how it started, as medicine, as a spiritual bridge, as social glue, how did we end up where we are now? The transition from sacred smoke to casual habit is one of the biggest moral chasms in our history. When tobacco hit Europe in the 16th century, it was stripped of its ritual. Within decades, it went from a shamanic tool to a global obsession. By the 20th century, industrialists were adding chemicals to make nicotine hit faster and harder, specifically to maximize addiction. They turned a communal ritual into a mass-market product designed for financial extraction. A shaman in 500 BC and a tobacco executive in 1960 were using the same plant, but they had almost nothing else in common. So, back to you and your coffee. When you feel that pull toward a substance, whether it's the caffeine in your mug or the medicine in your cabinet, remember, you aren't malfunctioning. You are a part of a million-year-old story. We invented drugs because we are a species that feels too much, thinks too much, and desperately needs to connect with each other and the world around us. We found fire. We found the right plants. And we found a way to bridge the gap between our ancient hardware and the world we're trying to survive. We've always been looking for that campfire. We've always been looking for a way to make the shadows dance. What do you think? Is our fourth drive the reason we've been able to build civilization? Or is it our greatest weakness? Let me know in the comments. Until then, take a deep breath. It's a habit we've had for a long, long time.